You are welcome to the 18th Sunday in Ordinary Time, and today we are privileged enough to have the Gospel reading and the first reading talking about what life consists in. And this is set to tone as in the case of the previous Sundays where somebody comes to request something of Jesus, and Jesus in teaching now resorts to a parable or extends it with something else. And so in the case of this Sunday also, Jesus teaches the parable of the rich fool, but then he does that as a response to this man who came to ask him a share of an inheritance, a presumed inheritance that he thinks somebody is cheating him on. Now, among the Jewish people, the Israelites, let me put it that way, and according to Deuteronomy chapter 21 verse 15 to 17, when there is inheritance to be shared, the firstborn takes a double portion of it. And so it seems that the issue this man has is because his brother, who is probably the eldest, has not shared the inheritance with him in the manner he had expected it. Probably his brother took a larger portion of the property and then gave him a smaller. So he came to Jesus that Jesus could go and then arbitrate between him and the brother, so that the brother will come to understand what it means to love a fellow brother and all that. And Jesus refused to do this. Jesus refused because according to him, this was greed. And this is what makes me think that probably the inheritance had already been shared. The brother got a greater portion of it than he did. That's why he had come. For which reason Jesus will say it is greed. Because greed is the insatiable desire or the lust for more and more. So no matter what a person has, the person still craves for more. And it is very dangerous for our human life, because if we do, it creates in us the self-conceited tendencies where we care for no one else. Even we don't have room in ourselves for God. Our lives become filled up with material things, with possessions, to the extent that God even does not have a hold over us. He does not have a space in us. So Jesus rather would want this man to be concerned about being rich towards God instead of having material possessions. So he taught the parable of the rich fool. And according to this parable, a certain man who had a field had a great harvest that particular time, that year, or probably that season. And then when he had it, he thought to himself, what shall I do? What shall I do? It's a very good question, because there he is confronted with something that he has no solution to. So he's thinking to himself what he should be doing. And then I had expected, and as it is your case, you also would have expected that once the person has had abundance, then his concern should be other people. Okay, since I have more than enough, then let me think of those who will not have more. But then he said, I'll pull down my barns, build bigger new ones, and then I will store my goods there. So everything is about himself. And then he said that I will say then to my soul, you have enough goods saved for you for many years. Now take life ease, eat, drink, and be merry. And the Lord said that, fool, this evening your soul shall be required of you. Now in this parable, Jesus wanted to just put some more weight on what he was already teaching this man. The reason why, rather than being concerned about the wealth that his brother has taken, he should rather be more interested in the things of God. Now look at it from this way. The context within which this man came. If you go a little bit before the time this man came, we read from chapter 13 of chapter 12 of Luke's Gospel, verse 13 down. And then if you go a little bit before that verse, you realize that Jesus was cautioning the disciples against the yeast of the Pharisees, which he said is hypocrisy. And now these Pharisees had been accused of being money conscious, being lovers of honor, and then fame and authority. And just in the midst of it, Jesus cautioned the disciples and then told them that God is far more than capable of providing for their needs. And he gave them an example of the sparrow. He said, look at the sparrow. What is their worth? 2 sparrows are sold for a penny. And look at it. A human person is worth more than the sparrow. And yet, even this sparrow, not one of them falls that your Father is not concerned about. So your Father is concerned even about the sparrow. How much more you, a human being, who by comparison are worth more than the sparrow. So Jesus was bringing the disciples to come to the point where life is not lived with worrying about the future, worrying about the physical concerns of life. And in the midst of this man comes with this question. So it looks like his life has been so filled with the concerns for material things, concerns for this physical life, to the extent that even what Jesus was teaching, he was not listening, let alone to let Jesus' teachings penetrate him and then cause him to change. He was not even concerned about. In the midst of this, then he came to ask Jesus about an inheritance which his brother is not sharing with him. And so Jesus should go and then arbitrate between him and the father, his brother, sorry. So you see it from here, the point where Jesus is coming from, where this man has come from. Now look at the parable he told, this rich fool. Now he is full probably because he did not think right. He did not think right. In the midst of saying, what shall I do? His answer to that question which he gave to himself was wrong, and very wrong, because when you have more, you should be concerned about others, but his concern was only himself. But then look at what he said. I will say to my soul, I will say to my soul. Now the Greek word there, psyche, soul, also translates life. So it's like this man is saying that now I will say to my soul, my life, you have many goods stored up for you. So this man thinks that life actually is eased when you have enough possessions with you. When you have more than abundance, then you have more of life. So in response to that, God says, you are a fool. Your soul will be required of you. The same word. So your life will be required of you this night. And then the goods that you have stored, for whom shall they be? So here, there are 2 poles here. The first one is this man saying that now my life is secure because I have enough goods stored up for me. So for me, life is having enough possession. And God saying to him, no, life belongs to me. And so to have me is to have life. So since you did not think of life in terms of being me being your life, then I will require this life of you, and then you will realize that these things you have stored up couldn't save you. They couldn't bring you life as you thought it would. So Jesus is bringing the disciples, because it was not an address to this man only. All of them were supposed to listen and take lesson, that for anyone to want to have life, that person should have God, because God is life and not material possessions, not the number of things we have, the possessions that we have amassed. No, we will have them and still leave them behind. So all these things is what Kohelet was thinking of when he began his book Ecclesiastes, and said that vanity upon vanity, everything is vanity. What does it consist in? If all that there is for a man to toil and leave his wealth behind for another person to come and inherit, then everything is vanity. Because yes, if this man dies and leaves everything, as God is saying to him, even though it's a parable, but it teaches us that this is a possibility, something that will happen to anybody. then there was no need for anyone reposing his confidence, his very life and everything that he has in the amassment of wealth, in trying to gain the whole world for himself. No. So instead, Jesus taught this, that this is what shall happen to any one of you who is rich in this life and not rich unto God, who is rich in terms of material possessions and is not rich unto God. So see it in this way. Jesus is not saying that to have material possessions is not good. What he is saying in effect is that for anyone who has material possessions and would think to himself that he has security because of that, that person is rich not in terms of God, not towards God. And that person is living a risky life. But then you could still have these material possessions and be rich towards God, where you don't see in what you have the security for life. Because when God calls his life out of you, these things could not be your security. They couldn't they can't give you the life that God is requiring of you back. So we are cautioned in life what we should be doing. When we are working in this life, we shouldn't put all our energy into making wealth, into amassing property, and then all forms of possessions around us. But in our bid to want to have and sustain this life, we should seek God. We should do his will, and we should worry less about what our lives would be in the future and all that, and let God be. This is what Jesus wants us to be doing, because when we take the other side, we are on the verge of living a vain life, and that is vanity.